it's curious to see if AJ can right the wrongs of the first fight. It should be interesting. It's a very difficult fight, sort of a crossroads matchup in his career, and certainly if you're AJ, it's probably a must-win in terms of legacy status and stuff like that. I know it's kind of puts a lot of weight on his shoulders, but it seems to be that that's the case.
Definitely, man. One of the first things I want to highlight and ask get your opinion on is: do you think fans are kind of missing the point that he had the balls to actually take the rematch? Because boxing politics, he could have quite easily have avoided this fight, gone down a different route, and got a fight with Wilder or Fury. But there's something inside him that is not able to live with the fact that he lost to Usyk and he wants that rematch. Do you think that's from his point, or is that his team?
Listen, I think it's both. Wanting to get your titles back, I think, should always be a natural progression. Should always be something that you want. Should always be something that you chase. I don't think I don't necessarily think it's a credit to him, but because if there was no championships on the line, then okay, and he'd still do the rematch, I'd give him more credit. But because he's chasing his world titles, I think any champion that's lost the titles would want the rematch. You see George Kambosos is doing the same thing with Devin Haney. He probably won't even win a round in the rematch either, but he's still trying to get those titles back. I think when there's no titles on the line, it's a bit different when you've lost your titles. But when you've just challenged or you've just fought, I don't necessarily see it happening. Like, for example, Canelo. Canelo was not the champion against Bivol. We don't see him clamoring for a rematch. He's probably not going to want to do that, right? So I don't necessarily think it's a big deal that he's going for the rematch because they're his belts. At least they were his belts. So I think he's just trying to take back what he feels is rightfully his. I think any champion that has lost the titles would always want that rematch. And usually we see it for the most part. For the most part, we see it. There are times we don't, but for the most part, we see it. Trying to think of situations where, or at least champions that try to make the rematch even if they don't get it. I know I wanted the rematch with Broner, I didn't get it. But in reality, that's sort of the way it usually goes. A champion never wants to kind of leave his belts on the table, and otherwise he winds up feeling it's unfinished business.
And the fact that he's got Robert Garcia in his corner, he's got two coaches. It's been a bit of a hot topic. I've spoke to coaches in recent times like Peter Fury, Dominic Ingle, two experienced guys, and they were like mega against the idea of having two coaches. And Peter said in his own words, you don't need any fucking backslappers, get a grip, that type of thing. And Dominic Ingle was the same, saying you need one voice is enough. But obviously I spoke to Robert and Angel, and they both seem to be like, they're all for it. They think it's going to work. From your experience in boxing, will that help AJ, or do you think that could backfire?
I don't know. Everybody has a different dynamic. I'm sort of, I think in camp, I've always worked with one or two guys at times, but in the corner, there was always one voice, so I don't know if they have a dynamic that works in the corner. I think it's more power to them, in the gym, they may have had the dynamic, but now it's, the tricky thing becomes having the same dynamic in the corner. That's we really have to make it work. That's where the pressure's on, and that's where you have to figure out who's going to talk.
Do you think that there could come a time where both guys might have different opinions on the way the fight's going and they might see it differently?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's always a risk, but I also think that having spent time in camp together, having worked in camp together may also have gelled that particular situation. I think everybody's should be on the same page by the time they get to fight night. It's a risk, sure, but I think by the time you get to fight night, you work together throughout the camp.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Gareth A. Davis said in an interview the other day that he's heard rumors that Robert and Joshua haven't always got on. There's been disagreements in the camp, whether they were training related, who knows, but I'm guessing that's part and parcel of the sport.
Yeah, that's interesting, considering it's the first camp together, right? So if you never know what the rumors are. Listen, they're going into the fight. There's a lot on the line here. So AJ has got to make sure that he made the right choices in his corner.
The obvious suggestion is AJ is going to be more aggressive, whether he's going to be clever about it or if he's going to go all out. From your experience, Paul, you've been around the sport a long time. Do you think he's going to have enough to get them belts back?
I think he's gonna need to be physical. I think that's the right idea. I just don't know how you catch up to Usyk. Usyk's got very good legs. You've got to slow him down somehow. So in order to be physical, you've got to get to him, and that's where I think it becomes a bit tricky. I also think Usyk has filled into the heavyweight division a little bit more. He's gotten more and more comfortable there every fight he's been there. So it's definitely a tricky proposition. I honestly don't see him winning the fight. I don't. But of course, I also didn't see him losing the fight the first time, and he lost. So it's that goes to show you how far my outlook goes. But I after what I saw in the first fight, I think the adjustments are very, very hard to make in this fight.
Interesting. And I'm sure you've seen Tyson Fury's recent, Instagram posts where he's kind of been synchronizing them with events around the press conference, the Eubank Junior Ben fight announcement. What do you think's going on behind there? Obviously, looking into the mind of a fighter, what do you think he's doing there? Do you think he's genuinely looking to walk away, or is he just winding people up?
I think Tyson's always great at winding people up. I think that's what he specializes in. Besides being a great fighter, he's a guy who knows how to wind everybody up. But I also think that he's trying to gauge reactions from people, and so just to see if it's worthwhile for him to come back, it's worthwhile for him to fight. So he's winding people up, but at the same time, I think he's also observing. He's not a dumb guy. So he's actually quite smart. I feel like he reads situations well. So I feel like he's winding people up, but at the same time, he's also observing the reactions he gets and seeing, and maybe they'll make a decision based on those things if it's worthwhile to fight, if it's not worthwhile to fight, and what he'll do in the future. I know people are very curious about it.
Definitely, and the other thing people were curious about was with this whole broadcaster thing. You've worked with different broadcasters. Adam Smith and Eddie Hearn have had said loads to each other back and forward over the last few months on that. And I think Eddie Hearn said the earlier in the week that he felt the Sky Sports wanted AJ to lose, and he felt like they were against him the way they were advertising the event. I don't know how you guys are seeing it in the US. Obviously, DAZN only recently announced they were getting the show. How does it appear to you guys, and what do you think of what Eddie's saying?
Yeah, I don't even know. I didn't even know there was that kind of beef. So is it in England? Sky still has the fight, and then
Yeah, Sky.
DAZN has the fight.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, Sky announced the confirmation about 2 weeks ago, but the way the general, the media coming across, and people are saying that it looks like Sky aren't too fussed about who wins, etc., and they appear to be promoting Usyk more. Obviously, this is just what I'm reading, and obviously Eddie said in an interview, "Fuck everybody who is against AJ." And I did ask Adam about that today, and he said that he saw Eddie having a pop at him, and he did defend himself, saying that it's not like that. They're just doing what they do, what a broadcaster does. So a lot of politics going on behind the scenes.
Isn't Usyk also signed to Matchroom?
No, no, I don't think he is. Not his contract finished in the last fight.
Oh, okay, all right. Wow, that's interesting. So they didn't even have options on him to get the. Wow, it's pretty crazy.
I think there was suggestions. Sky, if Usyk wins, Sky might jump in and sign him, and it's.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you never know if there's no tie-in with Usyk to Hearn, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Sure, I mean, I suppose it's a legitimate possible gripe that Hearn has. Maybe he thinks that Sky have done a deal with Usyk in the background, preparing for an Usyk win in the rematch. It's possible. Listen, this is business. I don't think Sky will feel much loyalty to Eddie after he took away all their brand, all their product and brought it to DAZN, right? So it wouldn't quite shock me if there's a deal done with Usyk, that nobody knows about with Sky, and if he wins this fight, it could trigger some sort of deal. It's possible. I mean, I'm literally just hypothesizing, but I'd say that
stuff like that goes on.
I'm not saying it's fair, but I'm saying when you treat people a certain way, they may treat you the same way back. It's like,
stuff like that goes on in boxing.
Yeah, I was working at Sky when they had the Matchroom deal, and everybody was happy. Everybody was, when everybody's happy at that point, then when Eddie took it over to the zone, there was definitely the friction there, and you know, so it's certainly, I could see Sky wanting to look out for their best interest, look out for their product, because they realized that Eddie did the same thing with his product, right? So in that regards, I guess all is fair in love and war and then business.
And the other aspect is Johnny Nelson's been, in the headlines this week because he suggested in his own way that AJ may retire if he loses, or he'd advise AJ to retire. And that's received a lot of backlash from fans, especially AJ and his team and Eddie Hearn. So it's kind of spiraled out of control from them comments with obviously what's been going on over the
I
last few
think
months.
I think what you end up learning, and I learned this after I retired a lot. You end up learning that people will say certain things when it revolves around the fight in order to get clicks, in order to get reactions. You're looking to get the best reactions and the traffic to go towards you and towards your channel when you're leading into a big fight. So saying polarizing things like that, like a strong opinion like that, will generate opinions one way or the other, right? People will either agree or and say you're right, or they'll hate you for it, right? But people will start to talk about it, and I think it's important not to sit on the fence with these things, and it's important to give these opinions. I've kind of learned that after my career as well, and so I'd say fighters probably need to start realizing, I didn't realize this myself during my career, we need to start realizing that that's probably a lot of things are just said just to get a reaction from the fans and see what reaction is given by the fans, and so, just like the fighters have their job, they got to do, the media also have to bring up talking points that will engage the fans a lot. And I think that's what Johnny did there when he said that. I don't necessarily think he's against AJ. But of course, when you're team AJ and you're on fight week and you're fight, your head is one track mind. You're very focused and sort of have this mean streak, and it's sort of like, at this point, I'm sure AJ feels like it's he against the world. And so when you see things like this said, you feel like that these people are part of that world that are against you, right? So it's it I can understand why AJ is mad, but I can also understand the Johnny Nelson side of it, and I think in time we'll understand that there's this is why certain people say certain things. It's the fan engagement rises when you say things like this, and that's what sort of the point of everything is, a fan engagement.
And in the US, have you felt there's a hype around the fight? Because obviously, I don't know if the zone are they promoting it right, and are you guys excited about this fight tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, boxing fans are excited, and it's not anytime there's a foreign fight, the U.S. doesn't hype it up as much as the fights inside the U.S. But certainly, among boxing fans, there's talk. I'd say there's not as much talk among casuals as you would normally see for a heavyweight title fight. But then again, it's a world heavyweight title fight on foreign land between two non-Americans. So how much, you're not going to get that much crossover appeal from it in the US. It's a major, major fight if you're a boxing fan, regardless of nationalities. But if you're from an American sports broadcasting perspective, I haven't really noticed a lot of hype around it because from the casual sports networks, from the sports networks in general, because like I said, there's no Americans involved in the fight, and the fight is also not in America. Where certainly people would talk about it if they were, like, for example, I think Canelo Golovkin will get hyped because it's in America, even despite the fact that it's not two Americans and neither guy is American fighting in the fight. When it's on foreign land, I think you sort of lose a little bit of the American hype machine.